Hey, everybody, and thanks for those who are waiting, and thank you for those who came to the live stream and basically pounded it about the weekend. I still can't get over that. But I want to introduce my longtime friend and partner in crime, Mike Silver. I'm proud to say that. How you doing, buddy?
Great, Zennie. How are you, man?
Outstanding. I'm even a better human being for having read this. Have lots to pass it down podcast, but what I was going to say is I'm also even better human being for having read this wonderful publication of yours over at the NFL Network, NFL.com, on just the Brady effect, but also the Bucks' success in in of signing Brady and how that's going to impact and arguably already is impacting the National Football League. This was written on February 4th, so not too long ago. Hey, first of all, talk about the Brady effect.
Well, Jason Light, the general manager, and Bruce Arians, the coach. Last year, the Buccaneers were 7-9, missed the playoffs yet again, and felt like they had a really good team and were getting a lot of production from Jameis Winston, but he also had 30 interceptions, which killed their chances in a lot of games. And so, with Tom Brady, who was going to be 43 at the start of the season, available for free agency, which is, almost unprecedented. Really, only Peyton Manning, younger but coming off the neck surgeries, is the only real, analogy I've seen. And so, a lot of teams were going after Brady. They were one of them, and they were getting some pretty strong signals that it might actually go their way, which was not a common opinion in NFL circles. And then the league year starts. They have a phone call set up right then. They're at Arians' kitchen. They're allowed to talk to him. And there's Tom Brady on the phone with Jason Light selling him on why he should want Tom Brady to come to Tampa. So it worked out. They went all in. They loaded up around him, partly because of him, with Rob Gronkowski, Shady McCoy, or I hate saying Shady McCoy, Shady, LaShawn McCoy, two different things, my bad. Leonard Fournette and later Antonio Brown. It would have been a challenging thing in any offseason, in a normal offseason, leaving a system after 20 years, new terminology, new teammates. But with this particular year with the pandemic, it was exceptionally challenging. I knew it would take them some time to round into form. They did. And here they are in the Super Bowl. Well, I'm not saying there's another Tom Brady out there, but in the wake of that, we're already in a quarterback seeking flurry that I think is going to continue. We saw the Stafford Goff trade, and Deshaun Watson is obviously a big piece of it. There's been talk about Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott. They're doing the franchise dance, so I guess that remains a little vague. And then there are domino effect spillover people like Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr that could be in play, Matt Ryan, depending on what their teams do, and then you have rookies. So I think there's a really aggressive mentality, in the wake of the Brady thing. Like, you know what, we can change our quarterback situation dramatically, and it might pay off.
I apologize. You mentioned Derek Carr. That's serious?
Well, no, what I mean with Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, that group is, I mean that I think those teams are happy with their quarterbacks and will stay with them. But I also believe that if they had a chance to get Deshaun Watson, for example, or Aaron Rodgers, I don't think that's going to happen. I do think Deshaun Watson will happen as far as him being traded. But, I think if you have a chance to get Deshaun Watson, you might just go, you know what, we're doing that. And then all of a sudden you don't have Derek Carr. Or if you're the 49ers, and Kyle Shanahan has always had a really, really positive impression of Kirk Cousins. And I'll say, this is my disclaimer on Kirk Cousins. I see Kirk Cousins the way all of you see Kirk Cousins, and maybe you too, Zennie, which is, sometimes he looks really good, and you go, wow, he's pretty good. And then you just have moments where you're like, no, it doesn't look that good. And so that's what I see. But the people who see him at the highest level are Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, those guys who had him in Washington. So I always, it's not me saying, hey, man, do whatever it takes to get Kirk Cousins if you're the Niners, but Kyle who has the power to do that might say that. So those are my caveats. There could be a domino effect, right? Like if the Rams couldn't have gotten Matthew Stafford, well, it looked like they were probably trending toward trying to get rid of Jared Goff anyway. But there was a scenario where they didn't. I just think because every team is looking at all these permutations. Alex Smith is another name. Teddy Bridgewater. Some guys are going to get replaced who are pretty good. Jameis, will he stay with the Saints? If Drew retires, they're just – it's always a little weird with the quarterbacks. But this year is an S show, and it's already started with Goff Stafford. And I do trace some of it to going after Brady and having the payoff.
I have to ask you because there's a mirror image that you presented in your article on the NFL.com website where one would ask the question, what would motivate Tom to make that call and basically pitch himself? He was that unhappy in New England?
Yeah. Listen, it's a grind there. And I know that people try to romanticize that from afar. Oh, Bill, he's a crusty old guy who'll call out anyone, but they win. It's less enjoyable there than most places, even when they're winning. And that doesn't mean it's a terrible deal. Obviously, they get 53 guys a year who gladly will take that deal, but it's a lot. And as far as Brady and Bill, who are both great and have done incredible things together, I just imagine you are the best person ever at your company at doing what you do and considered probably the most accomplished person in the history of your industry. You're a man in your early 40s with a wife and kids, and you're going to work and your dickhead boss, for want of a better word, is just making a point of calling you out in front of everyone a lot. At some point, it's just not charming. And I would direct people to the 2017 AFC Championship game. In practice that week, Tom Brady tried to hand the ball off to Rex Burkhead, and a horrible accident happened, and he split his hand right here, and blood spurted everywhere, and it was a horrible scene. And his teammates were like, oh, my God, Tom Brady's not going to play in the AFC Championship. This is a disaster. And it being Tom Brady, they found a way to stitch it up and kind of baby it and get him. He got to game day. They were losing to the Jags by 2 touchdowns. He threw 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns, great passes to Danny Amendola, I think, at the back of the end zone, and they won. Okay, well, after the game, Bill Belichick gave his press conference, and naturally, people in my industry were asking him, like, hey, Tom Brady had the crazy hand injury, and he just did something amazing. And listen, if you don't want to play along and you're Bill Belichick, all you have to do is, in your monotone, go, yeah, Tom's a tough guy. We rely on him. He got the job done. But he didn't do that. He looked at the reporters and goes, I mean, not like we're talking about open heart surgery. And I just watch that clip, and you tell me if that sounds like a place you want to continue to hang out. And Rob Gronkowski felt the same way. There are a lot of other people. And, it's nuanced. I don't think Tom Brady goes to bed every night wanting to, stab a Bill Voodoo doll, but it got old. And, they had a long, long time together. Now, when people talk about the Patriot way and the culture, a lot of that relocated south to Tampa. A lot of that was Tom Brady. And the other thing I'll say is this, earlier in the season, Bruce Arians, who I adore, called Brady out a few times publicly, and people went, oh! And what my assessment was, and I stand by this, was, trust me, Tom Brady can handle a few gentle public call-outs from Bruce Arians a lot better than what was going on privately day in, day out in Foxborough.
But it sounds like you're saying also, I don't know, I put words in your mouth, so forgive me for that phrasing of the question, but it sounds to me like New England Patriots coach Bill Belichick did not grow with Tom Brady. He had Tom as a 21-year-old, right? And he didn't grow with him into a mature adult with kids and a wife.
I would say that, but I don't think it's specific to Tom Brady. I think Bill just is I just don't think it's a great workplace environment, but it's awesome in terms of what they accomplish. It's great coaching. I don't want to caricature Bill. Like, we used to be pretty tight back in the day. Like, he's got charm. He is a well-rounded person, but
he's a nice guy. I like him. Yeah.
I don't think he's a nice guy. I just think he's got components of being a nice guy. But I think let me put it this way. It's not important to Bill to make his players feel as though there is a connection and, so it is for some coaches. It is to a lot of coaches, but that's not important to Bill. What's important to Bill is we're going to try to have superior strategy, and we're going to have a way of doing things, and we're going to coach you up, and you're going to do your job, and we're going to try to make fewer mistakes than the other team, and we're going to win. And that works a lot, but it works a lot better when you have a generational quarterback. And I'm super sensitive to this because I came into the league covering Joe Montana, and I've seen other generational quarterbacks and the effect they have on the entire franchise and the spillover. And I do not take that for granted. I joked to Joe Montana, years ago, but long after I covered him, I was like, bro, I rode your coattails too. I was at the Sacramento Union and the Santa Rosa Press Democrat pre-internet covering those teams. And I don't know if I get to Sports Illustrated if I'm covering, say, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of the late 80s, early 90s. And, it just uplifts everything.
I got to tell everybody, this man survived a rock through his window on the States Drive in Oakland.
No, nobody threw a rock through my window.
Who was that was harassing you around the time of White Tornado?
I don't know, but nobody threw a rock through my window. Thank God. I mean, that would suck.
Okay.
But fans now, now on Twitter, everyone says they will throw a rock through your window. But yeah, anyway.
Well,
I'm glad you mentioned my former address too, because we don't want to mention the current one.
No, not at all. No, I apologize. I'm
joking around.
At any rate, folks, moving along, back to the wonderful article. You mentioned also that they got production out of Jameis, but now Carson Palmer had said the year before, and this gets to the quarterback movement issue too. He said that it takes another year in Arians' offense as he designed it, but then he was willing to change it for Jameis Winston. Is that more? I mean, who else would they do that for among all the quarterbacks available? Because you mentioned the Brady effect, but let's face it, there aren't another 43-year-olds walking the earth that can say they remember everything from the Buddy Ryan defense to the modern zone blitz to the double A gap defense, right?
Well, two things. First of all, my dog apparently has spotted a potential rock-throwing assailant outside our window, so apologies for that. I can't. There's no one else here, and I can't stop him. Okay, so listen, Bruce Arians coached Peyton Manning. He coached Ben Roethlisberger, so he gets it. And yes, with Brady, so I met with Bruce Arians at the Combine before Tom Brady signed with the Bucks, but we had a drink and a good conversation about the possibility. And I said, would he have to learn your stuff or would you have to learn his stuff? And I'll paraphrase because the actual quote is just too precious, but he essentially said, I'll ask him, would you, who are very intelligent, like to learn our stuff, or would you like all of our guys who may not be as intelligent as you, all of whom might not be as intelligent as you, to learn yours? And, the message being it would be easier for Tom. But and it was a weird offseason, it turned out. That was before we knew there was no offseason. But what really happened was that Bruce Arians did start letting Tom Brady do more and more of it. And he told me about the middle of the season. He said, he's calling everything. And I said, what do you mean? In the huddle, on the sideline, in the week of? And he said, all of it. Everything we're putting in is with his input. And so, and let's also give offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich a lot of credit here. He's done a really, really good job. My dog wanted me to mention Byron Leftwich. He's a big fan of his.
I love your dog. Hey, speaking of which, on the future here, I want to get your thoughts. on Jared Goff because just before Jared Goff was shifted, I had Tony Franklin, former Cal offensive coordinator, on my show, and he was very pointed in his dislike for how the Rams treated Jared Goff. I personally think two things. First of all, I like Kirk Cousins. I love him having my offense. I've grown in my criticism of him. But as far as Jared, I think he's going to do even better at Detroit than people give it credit for. What are your thoughts on that move and what Tony Franklin's take is on it?
Well, yeah, I'm really close with Jared. I'm really close with Sean McVay. So I've just hated this whole divorce. But I share Tony's belief that the Rams handled this really poorly, both from a leverage standpoint and a respect standpoint. We're talking about a young man who has been a model teammate, highly competitive guy, tough, has bought in, who came back 12 days after thumb surgery on no reps and got thrown into a playoff game in Seattle and won, and then played pretty well at Lambeau in the cold the next week. So I thought they mishandled it, and Sean knows that because we talked about it as it was happening too. And Sean doesn't have to please me, but I think I can tell you that Sean felt bad the entire time about the way that it was, coming out. His perspective was, we don't want to lie, and we may try to move on, and I don't want to be a liar. But, I thought the Les Snead, the general manager's press conference in particular, was ridiculous and I called it a bad stand-up comedy edition. And, I don't think Jared deserved that. But I can't tell you exactly how much of, Sean understands football better than I do. Jared has his thoughts. I don't necessarily – I can't tell you, they had to change. But Sean felt he had to change, and they gave up a lot to do it. So I do think, given the way it was playing out, it is better for Jared that it happened early. He feels very, very wanted by the Lions powers that be. All of them called him. And I agree with you, Zennie. Anthony Lynn is their offensive coordinator. Now, I've made fun of new head coach Dan Campbell for his opening press conference, and frankly, he deserves it. It was a Saturday Night Live skit. He was talking about kicking people in the teeth and biting kneecaps, and it was – I just thought it was ridiculous. But
Soprano.
They did hire good coordinators, and they do have a pretty cool thing going there potentially. There's less pressure. Anthony Lynn will a guy I covered and loved dearly. It was a fullback, and they will have a fullback, and they will pound the ball, and they will have a power running attack. And think Seahawks year one of Brian Schottenheimer, but more. Think Rex Ryan when it was going well. They're gonna pound that ball, and that's gonna open up play action. And those are strengths. That's a strength for Jared Goff. And I also think Robert Saleh, who got a job with the Jets, is a fantastic coach. He told me this year that Jared Goff, in his opinion, throws better on the run or on the move than any quarterback in the National Football League. That would include Aaron Rodgers. I mean, what? Patrick Mahomes. He said, I think and that's something Jared's worked at. So the boot game should be there for Jared Goff in that offense. The power running, the play action should be there. So I am excited. I'm bummed it went bad. I want Sean to have the quarterback that he wants. So I guess that's Matthew Stafford. And I want Jared to have a new start where he is wanted.
Do you think, or had you had the opportunity to ask Coach McVay about the impact of the pandemic? Let me just get to what I'm really thinking. I think making drastic decisions in the middle of a pandemic is stupid because it's not steady state from a system dynamics perspective, okay? And yet you have all these changes expecting things are going to be better in a more normalized condition, and I just think that's illogical. Your thoughts?
Two things. One, I hear you, but if you're Sean, the owners didn't see it that way, right? We thought going into this season, a lot of coaches are going to get a pass, right? Because it's a pandemic and none of this is normal and there are not going to be a lot of job change. Well, we had more GM openings than in recent years. And then we had, guys like Anthony Lynn, who I love, who won his last 4 games. That's a winning record with the Chargers, who have not been the greatest in terms of institutional support. They had to move, and they fired him. There were 7 coaches fired, a bunch of them during the season. Bunch of GMs fired. So because the owners aren't seeing it that way, I'll give the coaches a pass. Although I think you're logically onto something there, in a vacuum. I get why coaches wouldn't see it that way. And then the second thing is, it's how this is. It's a copycat league. And Sean's even quoted in my Brady Effect story up high where he says, we look at what works, and it worked for the Bucks to, tear it up. And they didn't know it was going to be a pandemic. But if the Bucks knew they were doing this and there was going to be no off season, they probably still would have done it because it's Tom Brady. But they would have been like, ah, and they're still in the Super Bowl. So yeah, I hear you, but I just, because the owners aren't seeing it that way, that everybody else is going to, have to fall in the line.
Out of respect for your time, too, I want to mesh together two subjects that might seem to be disparate, but they're not. Tom Brady's offensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich, is one of two black offensive coordinators in the Super Bowl for the first time in history.
Cool.
Does Tom Brady, let me ask you a dumb question. Does Tom Brady's success with Leftwich elevate Leftwich a great deal to where he becomes head coach? And also, I had the opportunity, thanks to the NFL, to be in the NFLPA press conference, which evolved into a, at times, tear-jerking, to be honest with you, exchange between players that I've captured on video. I'm going to put on Zennie 62. Yeah. But at points I cried. They were really anguished about, as am I, why African Americans are not getting jobs. And I'm sorry, Mike, this whole look, you know what I'm saying.
Oh, well, I mean, I've been yelling and screaming about it for 31 years, and I guess rant is probably my word of choice. I finally snapped after the Dan Campbell got a 6-year deal and talked about biting kneecaps. And then Josh McCown, who's a current player, got a head coaching interview, albeit by a clown show of a franchise. But there's a lot of talk that's
Joe Brady. He just got into the league. Joe Brady was passing game coordinator 2 years ago. You know what I'm saying?
There's a lot of talk that Josh McCown, by the way, that David Culley's hiring is considered a placeholder, a short-term placeholder for Josh McCown. So listen, Josh McCown's a nice guy. I'm sure he's very smart. That is so insulting to hundreds of coaches I know, black and white. But from a minority coaching perspective, it was another awful cycle. The Bieniemy thing is maddening. If you look at Peterson, Nagy, oh wait, now it's Bieniemy. Well, he doesn't call plays. Those guys didn't. Nick Sirianni got hired. He didn't call plays. He doesn't interview well. Look at Nick Sirianni's opening press conference. Tell me how you thought the optics were on that. Besides, if you're making these decisions based largely on the job interview, you're doing it wrong, man. You think Bill Belichick had a good job interview? He probably sounded smart. He also probably sounded like a dick. And guess what? He's one of the greatest coaches in the history of the sport. Get over it. Interview's important, but film don't lie. And the last thing I'll say is this: you asked me about Leftwich. The most compelling things I hear, because I don't really know, but when I know Bruce Arians, and when I hear Bruce Arians talking about how pissed off he is that Byron didn't get interviews, and I hear that endorsement, then let's take a look at him. And if you think you understand why Eric Bieniemy should or shouldn't be a head coach, then maybe listen to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, who might have a better idea about his leadership and strategic and other qualifications, because they're with him every single day, and Andy knows as much as anyone in the league, and Patrick is our brightest star. And why don't we listen to what they say, and maybe let's err on the side of weighting their opinion a little higher.
Hey, to add to what you're saying, I interviewed two members of the Chiefs who told me, first Patrick Mahomes said, even though I didn't get a question, but he went out to say that Eric Bieniemy puts together the protection packages. He draws them up. And another person tells me he calls the plays too as well. So there's this myth about Bieniemy that's flying around on Twitter. People say, they point out about his past, okay? Yeah. But if his past is so bad, how come he gets interviewed every single year of the 3 years he's been offensive coordinator?
Well,
that didn't change, right?
Urban Meyer got a pretty quick, lucrative deal despite some stuff in his past. I mean, listen. I can't tell you. I just want it to be bigger. I'm mad about Eric, but I just want it to be bigger. There is systemic racism. I don't want to litigate every single. If there's racism, why did David Kelly get hired? Just stop it. I've been watching this for 31 years, as have you, professionally. I I can take you through every single coaching cycle and every hire, and I can point to 100 examples of why it's messed up. But bigger than all of that is there is systemic racism, and the way systemic racism works is much different than some jerk getting on our social media feeds and trying to litigate one thing and saying, well, how come there are not more white running backs? And just stop insulting me, stop wasting my time. But yes, Zennie, you and I will keep talking about this, and we have a long way to go.
I remind everybody, this man went to bat for Tommy Vardell. Remember that? When Vardell was, hey, a white guy, you can't run, and the dude was running, 4.5 40s and stuff?
I mean, listen, it's different when it comes to players. Players do get a fair shake, now black quarterbacks finally do. But at all those other positions that people are talking about, yes, you're getting a fair shake because you're being evaluated by real, empirical, indisputable, in most cases. I like, as a sports parent, I always laugh because my kids they played soccer and basketball and field hockey and lacrosse, and parents would be like, well, why is this guy playing? This guy should be playing. She's doing this. I want him. But I always was a little jealous of the swimming. And I did a book on swimming, but I was always a little jealous of the swimming.
I think I remember that.
Well, I was always a little jealous of the swimming and track parents, because why is that kid on the relay? My kid should be. Dude, they just raced, and the one who's faster is on the relay. Like, in track and swimming, film don't lie. Like, the four fastest swimmers are going on the relay, and the four fastest runners. And that race wasn't fair. Well, they all ran 400 yards, and the one who was the fastest was the one who crossed the finish line first and was declared the winner.
I got to ask you, who's going to win, Bucks or Chiefs?
My head says Chiefs are better and will either they'll do their usual Chiefs and spot them a lead and then go on a roll and wipe them out, or they'll just wipe them out. But I just want to term this right about Tom Brady. So don't take this out of context, anyone. He is the most accomplished player in the history of our sport, and his greatness is undeniable. He is great in every way. Not mutually exclusive to that, he is charmed. From that late pass interference call, the late flag in Green Bay to clinch that game, when they weren't calling anything in the secondary all game, all the way back to the tuck rule, over and over and over and over again, he is charmed. He is great. He is unbelievably great, and he is charmed. I'm just saying it's not mutually exclusive. So given that, I feel like somehow this is going to be a very, very close game that Tom Brady has a chance to win, and we're going to be like at the edge of our seat at the end of this game. I'd go with the Chiefs. I'd go with the Chiefs. Go with the Chiefs, but it's close to me. Sorry.
Yeah. As we speak about pass it down, before I do, how close were the Raiders to getting Tom Brady?
Not in the top three. The Saints, believe it or not, were the most viable alternative. They thought Drew was retiring for a while until he said he wasn't. And during that period, Sean Payton's plan was very much, I want Tom. Tom's camp was into it. And I really think if Drew had stepped away, that it might have been the Saints. The Chargers were, in the end, the close second, I think, because the Saints were already out. The Raiders would have been in that next tier with probably ahead of Indy. I'd say fourth on the Raiders, from what I know. I can't tell you for sure on that. My belief is that they were fourth.
And given that the Raiders had on Mariota, do you see them really making a hard run for Watson regardless? Because I thought Mariota was sort of the first strike to Derek, like, hey, you know what? We might move in a different direction if you don't produce in our system.
Sure, but that's not going to happen with Mariota. Derek, that was not close in practice. And, it's a great question. I honestly believe, and I said this to McVay as we went through these last few weeks, and specifically a couple of days before the trade, I said, I actually think the way that Gruden and Mayock have answered the Derek Carr question has straddled the line the best between truthfulness and not overly offending the player and creating a mess. And they have consistently said, hey, we love Derek Carr. He's our guy. We're always evaluating every position, including quarterback, and we're always trying to get better. Do I think John Gruden on Truth Serum would say Derek Carr is my dream quarterback? Absolutely not. Do I think John Gruden, when push came to shove, would keep Derek Carr over most other options that he will have this offseason? Absolutely, because they weren't even gung-ho all in on Brady the way those other teams were. And Deshaun Watson might be a guy who makes him do that, but then what's the cost? You've got to fix the defense. And so I don't know. I mean, I think John Gruden probably lives on a baseline where he's dissatisfied with his quarterback, whoever the quarterback is, much of the time. But then if you really kind of, got him in a room and said, bro, okay, look, here are the things Derek Carr really does well. Grant, do you acknowledge this? He's really smart at the line of scrimmage. He really throws the ball well. He's evolved this way. Yeah. I like all that. Okay, well, who's actually better that you can get without a brutal price that does those things and some of the other things you wish he could do, like move better or, hang in the pocket a little, whatever it is. So
Jameis.
If I had to guess, I'd say Carr stays with the Raiders, Garoppolo stays with the Niners, but those are two situations where I think that is the answer. Now, John Lynch came out and said, Jimmy's our guy, which, makes fans chill out a little and makes Jimmy feel a little better, but I think the real 49er answer is the same answer as the Gruden-Mayock answer. We love him, he's our guy, but we're always evaluating. And that's, I wish Sean and Les had said the same thing, but they didn't. It happened, and I'm pumped for them that they got their guy, and I'm pumped for Jared that he's in a better place for him.
Clarissa Thompson and Jeff Darlington, who actually you introduced me to Jeff Darlington at the Lee Steinberg Super Bowl party in Phoenix in 2015. Nice guy.
When we were with Hugh Jackson and Jeffrey Chadia, that was fun.
Absolutely, that was a fun. Wow, what fun times. We got to get over this pandemic some kind of way.
No doubt.
Who's the next guest?
Well, so typically this week, the last 5 or 6 years, I've co-hosted a Super Bowl party with my dear friends, Carissa Thompson of Fox, who is a superstar, and with Jeff Darlington of ESPN, who I just don't even really want to publicly compliment because honestly, you guys, he's a little egotistical. We are, the three of us, it's hard for me to describe how we are together, but it is excessive, over the top, obnoxious.
Oh my Lord!
It's a lot. We're
just
a lot.
Reminded me of something that I have to.
So basically, our party represents us. You can't come to our party because we didn't have it this year because of the pandemic, but you can experience our weird dynamic. Natalie got to experience that and survived it. It's a 2-part episode. Part 1 is up now, all major platforms, pass it down. And then part 2 will be up next week after the Super Bowl. We talk about our feuds. We talk about bone-colored pants and pink pussy hats, a whole lot more. I love those people in Jeff's case, against my better judgment. And I love my daughter. We're having so much fun. So please check it out, the Pass It Down podcast.
Oh, I got to ask you about this. Hold on a second. This is something that has I found rather mildly intriguing at points through my young history and researching this segment with you, our third one. And but I think you'll find it rather entertaining when you see it. It has to do with Carissa. She was apparently on the Dan Patrick show there, and decided that she would decided that she was, what the heck is
that's my friend
is this?
I mean, I can't really do her justice. Even as a writer, I can't descriptively do her justice as much as 5 minutes of this podcast episode or the next one, Will, but you'll get it. And in fact, when Natalie and I were prepping, I just said, listen, we're going to prep and do our usual and have questions. I said, but basically, if Carissa's being Carissa and Jeff's normal, it's just going to go right off the rails, and it's going to be amazing, and you won't understand it until it happens. And that's pretty much how it devolved. And, but she's a fantastic person and an absolute star who, is deservedly having great things happen to her.
You having a great time, man?
Oh, yeah. This pandemic's brutal. It's been a really, really, really hard time for many, many people in our country and in the world. So on a relative basis, we've been lucky so far. I just hope everyone listens to the science. And, I think if we follow the science and follow the people in charge of the federal government now, we have a chance to, try to get past this. It's going to take some time, but, this season's weird. Nobody, coaches, players, GMs, owners, no one I knew in the NFL thought we were going to get here, and we did. So, it's just, I'm not in Tampa. It's not a normal Super Bowl, but listen, everybody stay safe, listen to the experts, follow the science. And if all goes well in LA next year, we can hopefully have a real one.
Hats off to the league for getting this done. I have to say, with all the criticism, it was quite remarkable. Hey, still stick around in the backstage, folks. We'll be back in 20 minutes with Oakland City Council member District 7, new council member Treva Reed. Her dad, Larry, was her predecessor. So, Mike, stick around. That ends this on Zennie 62 on YouTube and OaklandNewsNow.com for the Zennie 62 Media Network. Thank you.